Welcome to the HFY Sci-fi galaxy. Let's begin today's set story. The waiver was, in Fear's opinion, a masterpiece of absurdist legal maneuvering. She was the only student reckless, or determined, enough to read all 112 supplemental pages for the Hazard Designation 15 immersion program. A choice she now deeply regretted. "You have to hear this," she said. Her voice a dry monotone that cut through the recycled sterility of the starship's cabin. Jib, floating upside down while juggling shimmering neutrogel spheres, made a muffled sound of acknowledgement. "The student acknowledges," Fear continued, "that a Designation 15 environment may contain topographical anomalies or biological entities suboptimal for continued existence. And it gets better. The Galactic Scholastic Council accepts zero liability for spontaneous disassembly of students at the molecular level, planetary consumption, or existential dread, resulting from exposure to non-sanctioned ecosystems." Jib fumbled a sphere, which drifted agonizingly slowly toward a ventilation grate. "Why do we even need inoculations against airborne spores and waterborne parasites? It's a controlled environment. Professor Mian said the Caldera Preserve outpost was hermetically sealed. What's going to get in? A history textbook." From her post at the navigation console, Hades scoffed without looking up from her datapad. "That's boilerplate for any world with a non-sterilized atmosphere. Legulese written by paranoid logic engines. Statistically, the chance of anything truly dangerous is negligible. We're descending into a reinforced biodome. The most dangerous thing we'll see is Malian's tenure review presentation." Right on cue, a klaxon screamed through the cabin. The sound was so primal, it felt as though the ship itself had been wounded. The soft ambient glow died, replaced by the pulsing strobes of emergency red. A tremor ran through the deck plates, then a bone-rattling one that jarred their teeth. "Purge," Hades snapped. Her right hand flipped 3 switches, while her left traced a glowing circuit path across the main screen. "Just atmospheric entry turbulence. Nothing." The ship plunged. Gut-wrenching drops hurled Jib spinning through 0G before he slammed into a crash couch. The gravity generators gave a mournful whine and died, leaving half a G of planetary pull to grab them with brutal insistence. "Minor turbulence," Professor Malian shrieked from the command chair, his voice an octave higher than usual. His long, spindly fingers whitened on the armrest. "Perfectly normal for a Designation 15 entry. An excellent, unscheduled teachable moment." But the diagnostic screens betrayed him. Serene green flight paths collapsed into waterfalls of crimson errors. "The nav computer is corrupted." Fear shouted. "Primary flight control is gone. It sets defaulting to high-energy biome coordinates. I can set to override." The ship convulsed in a shudder that felt like the jaws of some colossal beast clamping down. Jib, tangled in his own limbs, gave a series of high-pitched yelps that ended in a full scream. Fire, strapped to her couch, hammered emergency overrides. Each command came back the same. Sequence failed. Manual intervention locked. Outside the forward screen, Earth's blue-white marble vanished into a swirling vortex of green and brown. The ship no longer flew, it fell. The descent was chaos. Tortured metal shrieked. Conduits exploded. The frame groaned as atmosphere tore at a design built for space. The end came not with a bang, but a crunch, the sound of alloys surrendering to primordial mud. A heavy stillness pressed in, then came the dripping, and a low alien buzzing from outside. The hatch hissed open with a defeated sigh. The smell hit first, an assault that coated lungs and burned sinuses. A billion years of rot and bloom pressed in at once. Wet earth, overpowering flowers, and beneath it all, the copper stench of decay. Jib gagged. "What is that?" "It smells like a sanitation unit SEP's digestive tract." Heat followed. A suffocating wet blanket that plastered their silver jumpsuits to their skin. Their eyes, used to the dome's twilight, narrowed against harsh, dappled sunlight. Then they saw it. Just yards away, a 12-foot alligator was locked in a death roll with an equally massive crocodile. The water churned into pink froth, armored bodies colliding with asteroid force. They had studied predator-prey dynamics in sterile vids. This was no vid. This was carnage. Their 3 pairs of eyes widened in synchronized horror. And before they could process the reptilian war, a hazy cloud rose from the water, then dissolved into millions of tiny winged forms. Mosquitoes. Edessa's voice trembled. Order Diptera. Family Chilicidae. Dietary requirement. Vertebrate blood. The swarm descended. Ever desperate to project authority, Malian strode down the ramp. His mask of superiority cracked as his boots hit the mud. He pinwheeled comically before splashing into the swamp, covered in black muck and algae. The noise startled a clutch of baby alligators who hissed and lunged, sending Malian scrambling back like a panicked herbivore. From inside, Hades shouted, "Professor, long-range comms are down. The beacon casing is fractured. We stir cut off." The words hit him like plasma fire. His wide eyes dilated into black pools of terror. Shoving past the stunned students, he bolted into the ship. His shrill voice echoed, "This planet is a meat grinder. This is hell." The hatch slammed. His panicked voice crackled over local comms. "Defective immediately. I resign as Xenobiology Field Trip Coordinator. The mission is aborted. This planet is unfit for life. Any life. Lockdown initiated. Do not attempt re-entry. You stir contaminated." The satchel sealed with a final clunk. Hades stared at it. "He can do that." He just did. Fire said grimly. "Main systems will go dark in 48 hours. Hades whispered. "The power cells are cracked. Waste heat is flooding the fuselage. Life support can scrub air for 72 hours, but the thermal load will sterilize the interior." We said are stranded. They were alone, abandoned on a Designation 15 world by a coward. Fire pulled up the supplemental topography. Their only hope, a ranger tower 20 miles away through the buzzing, stinking green. The first hour was misery incarnate. Mosquitoes swarmed, turning their pale, sterile skin into a feast. The Athelians had never felt an insect bite. Now every welt burned with savage agony. "This is a violation," Jib yelped, slapping a fresh bite. "Why aren't the suits protecting us? These are designed for sterile environments." Hades grimaced. "Thin polymer weave, useless here. The proboscises are piercing the fabric. Our shields can stop plasma bolts, but not vermin. They stir too small, too fast. The system doesn't recognize them as threats." Jib slapped his own neck with a wet smack, leaving another angry welt. "My personal integrity field is being violated by flying vermin. This is unacceptable." Hades winced as she scratched at her arm. "The medspray nanites can handle this. They programmed for lab-grown pathogens, not a primordial bacterial soup. Every bite is injecting 1 billion new microbes." The trek had only begun. It was like trying to catalog a library by catching each book as it exploded around you. They burned through 2 of their 5 precious med packs in the first hour. Sophisticated nanites waged a losing war against the swamp's biological chaos. Swelling receded briefly, only for the next squadron of mosquitoes to descend and start the cycle over again. Fire, forcing herself into the lead, shoved aside a curtain of Spanish moss. Her scanner identified it clinically, but to her it felt like walking through a dead man's beard. On the other side, her boot nearly came down on a thick, coiled serpent basking in a patch of sun-dappled mud. It made no sound. Its mouth simply opened, a silent, terrifying gape revealing a ghostly white interior, a perfect biological threat display. Jibust's shriek was immediate, ear-splitting. Hades, clinging to analysis in the face of terror, blurted, "Warning, unidentified reptilian displaying a static threat posture, mouth agape. Itseps attempting to appear larger." Fire's fear knotted her stomach. Appendix Set, Section 4, Unexpected Carnivore Encounter. Her training manual had said nothing about white-mouthed demons. Jib backpedaled in panic, tripped over a knotted cypress root, and went down hard. The domino effect sent flailing limbs and yelps echoing through the swamp. The snake, just a water moccasin, seemed unimpressed. With languid grace, it closed its mouth and slid silently back into the undergrowth, leaving behind pounding hearts and a new terror of the ground itself. Every root became a snake. Every vine, a constrictor. Disoriented, desperate to move on, Jib charged forward without looking. His foot struck what looked like solid ground, with a wet, sucking sound. It gave way. In seconds, he was chest-deep in swamp mud. "It's eating me! The planet is eating me!" he wailed, thrashing wildly. "Stop struggling," Hades snapped, her voice sharp with forced control. "You sever reducing density and increasing liquefaction. You sever making it worse." She rattled off calculations like a problem set, words impressive and utterly useless. Then her tone sharpened. "Fire find a liana vine. Minimum tensile strength, 300 newtons. Hurry." Fire hacked through the undergrowth, found a sturdy vine and shoved it into Jib's trembling hands. Together she and Hades dragged the mud-slick alien free, sputtering and humiliated but alive. It was their first true adaptation, intellect bent against chaos. Jib collapsed onto solid ground, caked in a filth so vile it seemed to offend the concept of cleanliness. Hades, ever the analyst, pulled out her datapad, scanned the mud pit, and frowned. "Analysis complete," she said grimly. "Substrate 98% decaying organic matter, 2% colloidal particulates." Jib blinked. "What ISP is a colloidal particulate?" Hades hesitated, cross-referencing local data. A new line scrolled across her screen. Her expression hardened. "Apparently, the dominant species. Localism trash." She shuddered. "This entire planet is a toilet." As dusk bled across the sky in bruised purples and oranges, another instinct gnawed at them. The ancient one, prey recognition. Eyes prickled, backs stiffened. Two glowing yellow eyes stared from the tree line, utterly still, utterly focused. Hades scanned with a whisper. "Puma concolor coriae. Apex predator. Solitary hunter. Extremely territorial. A Florida panther." It moved like a ghost muscle in shadow, gliding between trees without a sound. Back to back. Defensive triangle. Fire barked, falling on risk assessment training. They huddled, trembling, flashlights cutting trembling beams through the gloom. The panther circled, silent, patient, weighing risk versus reward. Finally, with a blink, it melted into the night. They trembled, stripped of their last illusions of galactic superiority. Then the sky turned against them. Air grew heavy, charged. Thunder rumbled low, insects silenced. Purple sky blackened, lightning cracked, illuminating monstrous shapes in the swamp. Then came the rain. A torrential deluge hammered them, plastering silver jumpsuits to their frames. The ground liquefied, forcing them waist-deep into opaque black water. Something unseen brushed their legs. Again and again, terror and misery mounted. They collapsed against a massive cypress trunk, huddling beneath the storm, each trapped in private hell. Then, light, a flickering yellow glow through the rain. Artificial, hope fragile, but undeniable, flared in their chests. A roar followed, a guttural, mechanical scream, coughing and sputtering into silence. Then curses, sharp and snarled in an archaic tongue. Their interpreters flickered. Human, English, vernacular, highly aggressive. Too desperate to hesitate, they slogged toward it. They found him in a clearing. A man with a flat-bottomed boat and a giant fan caged on the back. Lantern light framed him in primal silhouette. A wrench hung in one hand. Rick Mallory was having a bad night. His carburetor was shot, he was out of jerky, and the mosquitoes were vicious. Then three nightmares staggered out of the swamp. Tall, skeletal, shiny tattered suits clinging to pale skin, enormous dark eyes, filled with exhaustion and terror. They looked like drowned scarecrows coated in mud and mosquito bites. Rick froze, rain dripping from the brim of his leather hat. He squinted, processing. Then he muttered to himself, low and calm. "All right, Rick, that seps it. You gotta lay off the moonshine." A gator surfaced. Curious, Rick reached into his boat, pulled a flare, struck it, and tossed the hiss of red near its snout. The reptile flicked its tail and vanished. Only then did Rick look back at the aliens. He spat tobacco juice into the mud. "You lost?" he drawled. The interpreter in Fire's ear chirped. "Query, are you a collective entity that has misplaced itself?" Hades' more formal module offered, "Inquiry, has your group deviated from its intended path?" Gypsus just displayed a blinking question mark. Rick sighed. He said seen dumb tourists before, but these three... He pointed at Hades' swollen arm, twice its size and angry purple. "That's bad," he pronounced. Final as a judge's gavel. Before they could react, he pulled 2 items from his bag, a half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey and a roll of duct tape. He uncorked the bottle, the chemical sting burning their nostrils, then poured it straight over Hades' arm. She yelped, sharp and raw. "Sterilized," Rick grunted, as if obvious. He tore tape with his teeth, slapped it over the worst bites. "Keeps the mud out." Then he held up the bottle and tape to the others, expectant. Fire and Jib shared a look of horror. Barbarism. Not medicine. But the itching was unbearable. Reluctantly, they submitted. Once patched, Rick dug out a strip of leathery meat. "Your sep will look like you could use a bite." Jib recoiled. "A bite? Something else is going to bite us. Do we bite back? Is this a ritual?" Rick stared. Expression equal parts pity and disbelief. Slowly he shook his head, bit off a chunk himself, and chewed with grim patience. Fire, using halting interpreter phrasing, explained their crash, their cowardly professor, their desperate goal, the Ranger Tower. Rick listened, nodded, chewing. When she finished, he spat tobacco juice, tossed the jerky strip, and grunted a single word. "Ranger Tower." "Yeah, I know it. Carburetor sits shot, but I can get it running. Hop on." The airboat ride was a unique form of hell the Atherlands had never conceived of. Their ships traveled in perfect, silent, inertialess grace. This was the exact opposite. The moment Rick got the engine to catch, it erupted into a deafening, full-body roar that shook bones and erased thought. All fear, all reason, obliterated in mechanical fury. The world became noise. Rick stood calm at the helm, one hand on a simple lever, a lone silhouette of serenity against chaos. The boat skimmed across black water at suicidal speed, blasting their faces with cold, foul-smelling spray that tasted of algae and rot. In lightning strobe, they hurtled through a tunnel of twisted mangrove roots. Floating shapes slid past, logs or alligators. Impossible to tell. Rick dodged them casually, humming an off-key tune swallowed instantly by the engine's hurricane. For once, Jib was silent. His mouth hung open in a continuous glass-shattering scream of pure terror, completely lost to the roar. Then silence. Rick killed the engine. The sudden quiet hit like a blow, their ears ringing, bones still vibrating. Only the drip of rain and the frog chorus remained. Ahead loomed their destination. The Ranger Tower, a skeletal rust-stained lattice clawing 80 feet into the storm-tossed canopy. It leaned like a drunken giant, less a rescue point than a tetanus delivery system. And guarding its base, lounging in black water like a scaly god, was the largest alligator any of them had ever seen. 15 feet of scarred prehistoric muscle, a living fossil. Hades' scanner identified it clinically. Rick just sighed, the long-suffering sound of a man personally inconvenienced. He grabbed a paddle, waded straight toward the monster. "Damn it, Jib, we talked about this," he barked, voice echoing. "This is my spot on midweek rotations. You get the north bank." The students froze, brains short-circuiting. Rick jabbed the paddle, voice rising. "Doom done. Sit you look at me like that. I remember you stealing my cooler back in Seps 09. Whole six-pack of Shiner Bock in there. Now go on. Get. I got tourists. He banged metal on metal, sending hollow clangs through the swamp. The gator, Big Jib, lifted its scarred head, fixing Rick with the contemptuous, one-eyed gaze of a creature that had ruled since the dinosaurs. Then, with a sigh heavy enough to ripple the water, it slid into the depths and was gone. The aliens gaped. A god beast dismissed like a stray mutt. The galaxy's power balance had just shifted forever. The climb was worse. A vertical nightmare of rust, algae, and vertigo. The storm clawed at them, wind peeling fingers from rungs slick with slime. Hades called warnings, flashlight beam marking weak points. Avoid the third cross brace 40% corrosion. Jib, burning adrenaline, braced an entire swaying section with his body. Go, before this thing becomes a submarine. Near the top, Fire's rung snapped. Her leg plunged into empty air. She dangled by one hand, world spinning. Then a weathered hand seized her jumpsuit. Rick, who had scaled the death trap with the casual grace of a squirrel, hauled her up with one grunt and set her on the platform. Careful now, he said evenly. At the summit, Hades attacked the broken beacon. The casing wouldn't open, fused shut. I need leverage, she snarled. Rick wordlessly handed her a battered multi-tool. Primitive, solid, beautiful. The casing popped with a crack. Sparks flew as Hades rewired the beacon into the tower's transmitter, cursing in technical tongues. At last, a pulse surged skyward, clean, powerful, undeniable. Through breaking clouds, a sleek alien rescue vessel descended. White light cut the swamp. Professor Maliansef's shrill voice boomed from its speakers. Remain where you are. Full decontamination is required. Your biosignatures are catastrophic. You are walking petri dishes. The three looked at each other. Mud-caked, bruised, patched in whiskey and duct tape. Then they laughed. Ragged, hysterical triumph. They had survived. Fire saluted Rick with formal reverence. Thank you, Officer Mallory. We are in your debt. Rick shrugged, spitting tobacco juice. Donnan, Stent, mention it. You still just be glad you came when you did. Hades blinked. Why? Is there increased predator activity? Rick grinned. Hell, this ain't set even hurricane season. The realization hit like ice water. Boarding the ship, each carried a relic. Fire with a swamp flower. Jib with a gator tooth. Hades with the gray roll of duct tape. Inside, sterile air burned their lungs. Med-techs in quarantine suits closed in. Malian shrieked in horror at their condition. Hades raised the tape. Her voice rang clear. Your models failed. This worked. We are not contaminated. We are inoculated. Fire ignored the professor, addressing the captain directly. Log report. Nazar designation 15 is insufficient. Nothing we knew prepared us for the vitality of this world. They don't just survive here. They master it. They call it home. Together, the three students looked down through the viewport at Earth. Deadly, beautiful, alive. Hazard designation 15 was and set a warning. It was a title. For more interesting videos, subscribe to my channel. HFY Sci-Fi Galaxy.